Men are worse than women when it comes to fixing. I've been on the receiving end of that. I dated somebody who, if I asked her, "How are you?" "Great," was the only answer she ever gave me.
That's all I've ever said to people.
And it actually made it very difficult for me to get close to her because I knew that she was having bad days. I could tell when she was frustrated, and so when somebody puts on that brave face and always wants to be great for their partner, it's the most selfish thing you can do because you're denying them that awesome joy of being able to be there for you. Remember, as social animals, we want to take care of the people we love. And how dare you deny them the unbelievable honor of getting to sit in the mud with you? You know, it is a joy that human beings get to experience. And one of the things, if you can, by the way, the biology proves it, that one of the things that releases oxytocin, which is that feeling of love and connection and trust, is shared struggle. Shared struggle releases oxytocin, which is why when families go through tragedy, they get closer, which is why when societies go through hurricanes, there's intense, politics get put aside and we support each other, right? And it's the same in a relationship, which is if you allow someone to sit and struggle with you, it actually deepens the relationship biologically. But what we're talking about is risk. What we're talking about is being vulnerable, making, and it requires more courage, as you've learned. It actually requires more strength to say, I'm anxious today, than it does to lie and say everything's great. That's the irony. Superficially, it's stronger, but in reality, it's cowardice. And by the way, that doesn't make it easy. The words are easy. And I've definitely been there and you've been there. But I think that if we like someone, and I always say leadership is about going first. That's why we call you leader, right? Doesn't mean you have the answers. It doesn't mean you're right. It just means you stepped first into the unknown, that we took the risk to go first. And so in a relationship, one of you can take the lead. One of you can go first to set the example of what it looks like and feels like to say, I'm having a bad day today. And I don't need you to fix it. I know what I'm going through. I want to tell you all of this stuff because I want you to be there with me. And I want to be there with you because I don't want to feel this way alone.
And that key second step, which I learned literally in the car this weekend with my partner, was you then need to work with them to educate them on, and vice versa, on how you would like to be held.
Correct.
In that moment.
Correct.
Which is actually a really difficult thing.
Correct.
Because, for example, I'll give you an example with me and my partner. When I'm going through those moments, I go really quiet.
Yep.
I shut down. I'm glued to my phone. And so if she says something to me, my brain almost viewed it as like, why is she bothering me in my hard moment? So I might say something like, babe, I'm just dealing with something. And then it always seemed to me like she'd ask me more questions.
Of course.
Hey, babe, look at this. Come look at this. Look at this. And
She's trying.
I'm thinking, I just told her that
Yeah.
I'm dealing with something. She's making it worse. She's trying to give me more stuff to deal with.
Yeah.
So I had this conversation with her. I said to her, let's just create a safe space here. This is how I feel. I feel like when I'm going through something and I'm dealing with something and I shut down and look at my phone, the amount of irrelevant questions you ask me then increase considerably. And then she gave me her perspective on that situation. Then we kind of formed a deal about in those moments, the first thing I'm doing wrong is I'm going, babe, I'm dealing with something.
Right.
And I'm saying with a certain tone
right.
and a lack of love and empathy,
yeah.
that's immediately making her feel abandoned and rejected.
Of course.
So I'm going, babe, I'm dealing with something. So she said to me, if you say it in this way, if you say, babe, I love you, but could I just have 5 minutes because something's up and I just need to work through this, her reaction would have been totally different.
Of course.
And having that second stage of like, let's find a solution together and understand each other was so difficult. But going back to my question.
Well, it goes back to what we said before, which is business partnerships, personal relationships, friendships are acts of co-creation.
Yeah.
And so I have definitely been guilty of checklisting people, professionally and personally. Oh, they have this, they don't have this. I guess I could do without that one, And the problem with a checklist is people can feel it, And I keep complaining. I said I have a bad picker. It's because I would show up with my checklist early in my 20s, and if they were strong, which is the kind of person I want to date, they would be like, this idiot has his checklist. I can't meet everything on his checklist. He's not for me, right? And so what I ended up was attracting was people who would mold and bend to fit my checklist. And then I'm like, but then I don't even know who you are. Bad picker, my fault, right? Take full accountability. But the point is like, I go to pain saying I may have preferences. I have a couple of deal breakers. You know, I think everybody should know their deal breakers. But the amazing thing is I actually have fewer deal breakers than I thought I did.
What are your deal breakers?
Not talking about
You
them.
set that up,
No.
Simon.
No, that's for me.
Fair enough.
That's for me. This is not a dating app.
I can tell you my deal breakers.
Great. I'd love to hear them. So, I mean, look, there's some obvious ones, right? Some of my deal breakers, you know, I want somebody who's taking themselves on.
Mm-hmm.
They're in constant growth and constant improvement, right? Somebody who thinks they've got it all figured out, this is not going to work out, you know? Obviously, you know, integrity, somebody who lives a life of service really matters to me. Like when somebody, like all they're driven by is money, cash, fame, fortune, success, you know, like anybody who posts a picture of themselves on a private jet on a dating app is an immediate no, you know? It's like, ugh, right? Like, of course, those are some basics because those are my values. I'm service oriented, and I need to date somebody who's passionate about something. It doesn't matter if it's been commercially successful or not. That's not what I care about. But you have to have a love for something, a passion, something that like excites you and gets you out of bed, even if you don't get to do it all the time. I don't care if you're a painter. I don't care if you're trying to change the world. It can be big, it can be small. Just have a love for something.
Shall I give you my 3 that I look for?
Please.
So I was, through my early 20s,
I love that you wrote them down and you know them.
Because there's only 3 of them. There used to be 300. So it'd be like this color hair, this color height, this color this. I want it to be this shape and this size. And then I was like, how do I consolidate this down? So I came down to 3 things that are important. First one is quite surprising to some people, but sexual attraction.
Of course.
Because I've had physical attraction without the sexual attraction. But I've never had it almost the other way around.
Good distinction.
So I've had physical attraction where I've dated someone who's absolutely beautiful and then there wasn't sexual chemistry there. So I prioritize sexual attraction, which I think is important. The next one is intellectually stimulating. Which is what you've described, where they have a passion. I might not even believe it's true or like it or care, but the fact that it stimulates me and we can have a conversation.
And they can teach me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Me and my girlfriend, she believes in all these things I don't believe in, but she'll sit there and tell me that, you know, something with crystals in this glass of water, I don't believe it. She doesn't have an expectation that I'll believe it, but I'm peering into a new world of breath work and spirituality. And
right.
I do believe in breath work. Anyway, and the third one is that we make each other better people. Really, I'm going to be honest, it was a bit more selfish. It was actually that she makes me a better person, but I'm willing to give that back, obviously, and I want to give that back. And what I mean by that is in my mission, in the work that I love to do, they support me. So those 3 things, I think if I can find someone that has all 3.
So I think you've summed up my 3 as well. I went way more specific, which is why I rejected the question. But if I take it up a few thousand feet,
okay,
sexual attraction, 100%. And I think it's a great distinction between physical attraction and sexual attraction. So I agree with those 3. Those are my 3 too. The way I used to describe, or I still describe relationships, I think great relationships are based on what I call 3+1, which is you have to have, and it's the same list. That's the funny thing. You have to have intellectual compatibility, which is you teach and learn. You have to have emotional compatibility, where you're showing up to grow together, right? You can find vulnerability and hold space for each other. You have to have sexual compatibility, which I consider part of creativity. So creative and sexual which is not physical attraction, it's sexual attraction and like I said, creativity. And you can have a good relationship with 1.5 or 2 of those, but you can't have a great relationship without 3.
Yes.
Because they're not all on high at the same time. They go up and down and they wax and wane. And so you need the others to hold the others up when one is down.
That's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why you need all 3. Because like I said, you can have a ton of fun with 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah.
But great requires all 3. And the +1 is circumstances.
Like timing, location.
Like I've met people who are 3s and they're married and they're kids and they're happily married. And we look at each other and go, at a different time, it might have worked, but definitely not now. And we just smile and we go on. Or I've met somebody who lives on the other side of the world and I'm not moving, they're not moving, and you shrug and you go, if circumstances were different. And, you know, it's like, and you just, it's not a sad thing. It's just it's a smile. You know, it's like and by the way, I've dated 1.5s and 2s and they're amazing people, but those three things.
It's so true. The reason I know that
It's so funny that my 3 + 1
is
your 3.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same list.
Well, I've dated. The only reason I have those 3 is because I've dated someone who had 2.
Right.
And I've had 2. So
You've had all the permutations of 2.
But there's always been one missing.
Yeah.
And so I remember thinking, in the woman that I thought I was going to marry, that was missing this one thing. If she just had that one thing, then I genuinely believed I would have been happy. And I'm thinking about this particular person from many years ago. She's married. She's got a kid now and everything. I think I lost out there, but I'm very, very more happy myself. But she just missed one of those things. And then I can think of my previous relationship, like, oh, if they just had that one thing. So now I found someone who I genuinely, whether she's listening or not, has all 3. And I go, that's me. Let's go to the till. You know what I mean? Like
the thing that I'm appreciating, there's 2 things that I'm appreciating. One, she has all 3, but you have to have all 3 for her.
Oh, I hope so.
Right? Because like she has to find you sexually attractive. She has to find you intellectually stimulating, and she has to find that you're emotionally available for her, which means when you're having a bad day, you have to say, I'm having a bad day, not be great all the time. Otherwise, you're only a 2 to her. If you're actively being strong all the time, then you're only a 2 to her, and you'll only ever be a 2 to her. So there you go. So it's all fine and good for you and I to have our 3 + 1, but we have to have the 3 for them too, and that's the work.
That fluctuation point is so important.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we have 2 in our relationship.
Yeah.
2 of the 3.
Yeah.
But the other 2 are very important to hold us through that storm.
And it's unpredictable as to when they go up and down. And sometimes you're not sexually compatible and you're just snuggling and that's all you want to do. And you don't want to do anything more than that. But that's okay because the vulnerability is so deep and the intellectual is so high that it's okay. Like the relationship is really very, very good. You're both very happy.
Should we make this dating app or should we let someone else steal the idea? Because there's going to be someone out there that's going to go, the 3 + 1 app.
I think we should make it.
Okay.
And we should call it 3 + 1.
I love that.
So I guess I do know my list, and that's the 3. And if I look back at my failed relationships, and again, personal accountability included, I think that in some cases I definitely did not present myself in one of those things. Or like I said, the act of co-creation is really, this is to me is like the biggest insight that I've learned about myself in my own dating life, which is, and I love what you said, which is I'm not into her crystals and all of that stuff. And she knows it. You're not pretending that you are, right?
God.
And you're okay with the fact that, she wants crystals to guide her life. And she's okay with the fact that you don't. And I think that's really important, which is the number of people I meet who say, well, I'm into crystals and he's into crystals. This is going to work. And I'm thinking, maybe. But or worse, they go, he's not into crystals. I could never date him. Right? And it's not a question whether they're into it or not. It's a question whether they are open to learning from you and they're not rolling their eyes when you start speaking, or vice versa. I've forgotten his name. There's a famous relationship therapist who can tell in the first 5 minutes if a couple that's come to see him are going to survive or not. And the test is when one of them starts talking and the other one rolls their eyes, it's over.
Professor John Gottman.
Is that
yeah? You
did a thing with him?
I did a thing on him.
Oh.
So
so good, right?
Yeah, it's contempt.
Yeah, it's contempt. And what it is, it's not just contempt, it's intolerance. Right? Like, you idiot. Or how can you be so stupid?
Deep unaddressed resentment.
Or oh God, Yeah. And I think when somebody starts talking about their crystals and you start rolling your eyes, it's over. If somebody talks about their crystals and you can say, it's not my thing, but tell me. I genuinely want to learn. And I'm open to some of it. I want to learn things I know nothing about. My last girlfriend is so good at the thing she's passionate about. She's so good at it. And she'll send me pictures when she's working on something she's working on. And I just am so blown away about how good she is at the things she does. I get joy out of seeing her be so good at her thing. I love it.
Do you miss her?
We're still very close friends.
Have you experienced heartbreak?
Yeah. I have. You mean yeah.
Romantic heartbreak?
Yeah, sure. I think I've had all the things.
I think I posted something the other day about just how it's the most incredible feeling. As in,
It's awful.
Yeah, but it's an incredible because it's so deep and so prevailing that I actually think it teaches you a lot about the nature of what it is to be a human.
I think this is we've gotten a beautiful circle here, which is to experience heartbreak, though awful. Again, it goes back to balance, right? In all sadness, there is lesson and joy. In all happiness, there's a cost, right? Always. There's a cost for everything good in our lives, and there's lesson and opportunity in everything bad or negative, right? So, all of the things that I've done that have brought me tremendous happiness, tremendous joy, I know some of those costs, and it's only bad if the cost wasn't worth it. But in most cases, the cost was worth it, and I did it with eyes wide open, right? And when there has been pain or loneliness, I'm learning about myself. I'm learning about my friends. I'm learning about how I want and need somebody to show up for me, which means that in those good times, I can equip them, and I can be better equipped myself. I can say, hey, listen, if this ever happens, I know how you can hold space for me. You just have to say these 3 things. I need you to do this, and you'll be amazed how responsive I can be in that situation. To your point about learning how to communicate with your girlfriend, about when you're feeling anxious and you need 5 minutes to yourself, right? And as I'm going to say this over and over and over again, which is successful relationships are acts of co-creation. And to have a successful act of co-creation, you both have to be really equipped to listen and to volunteer information to help the other person. In other words, when we talk about what we need, we're giving somebody tools. And when we learn to listen, we're gaining tools. And the goal is to help them fill up their toolbox and to work very hard to fill up your own. So filling up your own is about listening, and filling up theirs is about being an effective communicator. And now when you both have tools, you can go build something together. Because if only one of you has tools, the thing you're going to build is going to be weak. And a business partnership, a creative partnership, a personal partnership, they're acts of co-creation. And that insight has come from failed relationships. And thank goodness, some very strong, smart, wonderful women who've told me, do you know what your problem is? And I listened.
And I asked you 20 minutes ago what wall you'd pull down. I said, the layers of the onion you've peeled back. I shared mine.
Yeah.
I said, with my girlfriend, I've started to tell her what I'm really feeling.
Yeah.
I've never done that before. What are those walls that you've recently pulled down so that people can come inside?
I've become much better at understanding how some of my symptoms of ADHD show up in relationships, which I just was unaware of. And so instead of taking total accountability, which I do, I take accountability for showing up, I'm now able to explain them so somebody can look for them and point them out when they're happening so I can take accountability. Because some of it's about awareness, right? And so I literally can say very early in a relationship, you may experience this with me, ... If it happens, I know that I do it. Please just point it out and I will know I have the tools. I'm just sometimes unaware that it's happening, right? And so I'm asking for co-creation. I'm saying, look, I'm in this. I take all the accountability for my own behavior. Sometimes I just need you to tell me when I'm doing it. And so I'm asking for help, right? And like I said, leadership is about very often just going first. And if either person in the relationship goes first, it gives a safe space for the other person to say, well, let me tell you about me. And I think being open to feedback allows you to give feedback too. But for me, the huge insight that I wish I'd known before, which is, even though I may have said it, I didn't know how to do it, the act of co-creation. Whenever you hear relationship, like really successful relationships, you always hear both the partners say, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I never really understood that. Like if it's I look at my great friendships, I wouldn't say there's a lot of work, they flow. But I guess the difference with a friendship is like, I don't have to see them every moment of every day. And I think the work is that act of co-creation.
I thought the work was sacrifice. When I had great relationships going, it's a lot of work. I thought, well, they're not sleeping at night and
right.
He can't watch the football every time he wants to watch it. I didn't think it was active work. I thought it was the stuff that you didn't get to do.
That's funny. Yeah, it's not sacrifice, it's service.
Yeah.
And again, it's really funny, my experience with the military versus private sector. So if I do anything pro bono in private sector, and this is since the dawn of time, right? If I do anything as a favor to a company, almost always they will continue to take and take and take and take until I put my hands up and go, okay, we're done. This is enough, right? The military, it's the total opposite. I'll do something as a favor to somebody, and I will never hear from them ever again. And the reason they don't call me is for fear that they will look like they're taking advantage. And I have to sit down with these people, these wonderful human beings, and I found a way. I said, do you realize I found a way to get them to call me, which is I'm like, do you realize when you don't call me, you deny me the opportunity to serve my country? And that gets them every time. But the reason I bring it up is it's the same in a relationship, which is when you don't call me and ask me for help, when you don't call me and say I need to cry, when you don't call me and say I'm in the mud, you deny me the opportunity, the joy, the honor of sitting in the mud with you. Not joy, honor. You deny me the honor, because it's not always fun. You deny me the honor of sitting in the mud with you. And I remember telling one of my close friends, I said, we were riding bikes somewhere, and I just out of the blue, I don't know why it hit me, I turned to him and I said, you're one of those friends that if I was really in the shit, I would call you. And his reaction is he didn't say thank you. He said, I'd be mad if you didn't. And I've done that to friends. I've done that to friends. A friend of mine who is struggling, I said, when we got off the phone, I said, hey, listen, I know you're in a bad place, so don't be an asshole and deny me the joy or deny me the opportunity to sit in the space with you moving forwards, okay? Like if you need to call me in the middle of the night, you call me. Don't deny me the opportunity to be there with you.
If you've previously handled the moment when they did call you by trying to be a fixer or anything, they're just not going to do it regardless of what you say.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know what I'm saying?
Correct.
And the reason why I know this is because I said this to one of my friends recently who had opened up to me. He was back in London, and I remember going to say to him, "Oh man, please tell me next time this happens. You always seem to tell me when it's." And then I reflected and went, "Do you know why?
You're a fixer.
I'm a fixer."
And
so he doesn't want to fucking call me.
Exactly.
Because he doesn't like the way that I
exactly.
I hold space for him. I'm trying to correct everything.
Correct.
So even if I'd gone, you fucking better call me next time.
Yeah.
He would have in his head go.
But what you can say now is, I realize in the past, I was ill-equipped. I didn't have the tools on how to hold space for you.
Yeah.
And I realize in the past when you've called me, I've tried to fix everything, which is hardly an incentive for you to call me again. And I want you to know I've been working really, really, really hard on that skill set. So give me another chance. If you're ever in the shit, I am better equipped. I won't be perfect. It's a work in progress. But I want you to know that I want to be there for you. And I think you'll be surprised I'm a lot better than I was. And if I'm not, you can tell me.
Okay.
Because I would want somebody to tell me if they're in the shit and I start going to fixing mode, they go, Simon, you're trying to fix me. I go, sorry. And I can back off immediately because I know what's happening. Because you can correct, this is the great thing about human beings, is it's kind of like the difference between public speaking and writing a book, right? Public speaking is really forgiving. I can have screwed up grammar. I can misspeak, and people are tracking. I can bounce from subject to subject and people are fine. If I do that in a book, it's unreadable. Right? And so it's the same, having a conversation with someone, like it's a very forgiving process. Like when you're trying to fix something and then you're doing, and that's not what they need. And they go, stop trying to fix it. You're like, sorry. You can actually get the energy in the right place back really quickly. Something you can't do over text.
Yeah.
Just I had to put that public service announcement in there.
Yeah.
They're very easily correctable. That's the nice thing. Like you can start, we've both had the experience where you're having a really bad, it's going sideways fast, and it is going towards bad. And one of you or both of you is really making it worse and pouring, fuel on that fire. And then all it takes is one of you to back off and say, listen, can we just take it back? And you'll end the phone call hugging and, hugging each other.
It happens all the time.
It does.
We sit here in a couple of years' time, Simon, and we have a conversation, and some of the challenges you're facing in your personal life, some of the ones you've talked about, personal and professional, transition moment in your professional life, they're in a better place. Mm-hmm. Things are idyllic, dare I say, because I think that's a bit of an impossibility in the human condition, but things are idyllic. What does your life look like?
For me, scale matters. And I am looking, so one of the things that I measure success by momentum, not by achievement. I think I've shared this with you before, how I've always viewed my career as an iceberg, which is when I first started, when I had a vision of the world. I imagine a world in which the vast majority of people wake up every single morning inspired, feel safe wherever they are, and end the day fulfilled by the work that they do. That is a vision that no one else can see. It exists in my imagination. It's like an iceberg under the ocean. I know it's there. I can see it, but no one else can see it because there's nothing sticking above the ocean. And so I talk about my vision and people be like, you're an idiot. You're an idealist. You're crazy. That's impossible. And I do some work, whatever it is, and a little bit of iceberg pops up. I've done something that is a tangible demonstration of what I'm talking about. Gave a talk, gave some examples, found a company. And somebody goes, oh, I see. Yes, I can see what you're talking about now. And they start working with me. And now those are the early adopters. And I keep doing work and I keep doing work. And the more and more of the iceberg starts to stick up above the ocean. And no matter what point of my career I've been in, no matter how much success I've had, however you want to define it, when somebody says to me, oh my God, it's amazing what you've achieved, my answer is always the same: tip of the iceberg. Because though there may be more icebergs sticking above the ocean now than there used to be, all I can see is what remains to be done beneath the ocean. And that is vast. And so I'm never really satisfied with what I've achieved. I'm trying to find ways to get more of the iceberg out of the ocean, right? And so the question is what I've been doing up until now will have some effect to get more iceberg up, but not as much as I need. So if you ask me sort of like, what does my life look like in the future, I always think in terms of momentum. And the thing that drives me is all of the founders of the women's suffrage movement in the United States all died of natural causes before the first women ever voted. In other words, I have to put in place as many systems and elements as I can so that when my time comes, I will die confident that others will continue the work that I've been working on my whole life without me, just as I have continued the work of those who came before me.
Why does that work matter to you?
I believe we all have a responsibility to leave this world in better shape than we found it.
The accomplishment of that work, how would it make you feel? How does it make you feel on an ongoing basis?
I'm proud of the momentum that I'm contributing to. And momentum is more important to me than any specific thing that I may or may not have accomplished. Because
why not just go get a yacht and go to a beach and just like live it up?
I mean, I would probably enjoy it for a few weeks and then I'd get bored. It's probably some sort of neurodivergence. I like difficult and uncomfortable, and overwhelmingly huge problems are my favorite kind. Undoing everything Jack Welch did and getting capitalism rebalanced. I mean, I can't do that alone for sure. I'm not the only person who has that vision. I'm doing my part, and it is so vast with so many moving parts. It is so complicated that the easier thing would be to give up and just go live on a yacht.
It gives you a sense of meaning.
Oh,
right?
Don't get me wrong. There are days that abandoning it and just like is very appealing.
But it gives you a sense of meaning, right?
Yeah,
it gives you a sense of like life becomes worthwhile when there's something scary.
Yeah, I want to know. I want to know that I lived a life worth living. And by the way, for different people, that is defined differently. For some, living a life worth living means looking at a child that you've raised and saying that kid will be okay without me. In other words, they will continue the work that I've done without me. It's all the same mentality. And I don't care where somebody finds that meaning. I want them to have it.
The reason I ask this is because I'm always trying to separate like the virtue from reality. And when I speak to young kids, they all want to change the world. And I'm always compelled by like, why? And even with this podcast, if someone asks me, Steve, why did you do the podcast? Of course I can say, I want to help people with this information and whatever else. And I'm always like trying to make sure that I'm fully in tune with the exact why, the most innate human reason why I'm doing this. Like, why am I doing this? Am I doing it because lots of people watch and that's great for my ego and my self-esteem or whatever? Because loads of people are clapping? I'm doing it because I see these messages and people come up to me and say it's really helped them. To be honest, it's probably all of these things. If I'm being like truly honest with myself, it's probably all of these things.
Well, they're metrics, they're indicators, right?
Yeah.
Like you and I, one of our metrics, it's a hard one to track, is there is tremendous, I don't know what word to use. I think there is gratitude when somebody comes up to us on the street and says, Thank you so much. I read your book, listened to your podcast, whatever it is, and it changed my life. Right? And this is a total stranger who just by chance that we happen to walk past them in that moment. So we can safely assume that there are other people that we haven't walked past. But through, and not only did they see us, they mustered the courage to go up and talk to us, you know? And that is a metric.
Why does it feel so good?
It's not about feeling good. It's not about feeling good. For me, it's proof that the work that I'm doing is going places I never imagined it would go.
And does that feel good?
That feels like, yeah, I mean, it feels like the work that I should continue working. That's what what it makes me feel. Doesn't make me feel like, it's not like it doesn't like do anything to my ego or anything. It just reminds me, you got to keep doing this. Like, you don't have a choice, you know? I don't know if I've shared this story with you before, but I went to Afghanistan with the Air Force during the war in Afghanistan. I went for 24 hours and nothing went according to plan. And we ended up thinking we were going to get stuck there. And I never told my parents that I was going to Afghanistan. We landed at 10 o'clock at night in Bagram Air Base, and the door had opened on the side of the plane. We hadn't got off the plane yet. And about 10 minutes after we landed, the base came in a rocket attack, and 3 rockets hit 100 yards off our nose. You could hear the booms, obviously. The air raid sirens are going. Over the speakers, it's telling everybody to go to their shelters. And we're just on a plane filled with gas. And weirdly, I was calm because everybody else was calm. And we never bothered putting on our vests or our helmets because what's that going to do? And we just sort of hung out. And I was weirdly relaxed. And for anybody who's ever been in a war zone, they'll know this. You have all the feelings you're supposed to have. You don't necessarily have them at the right times. My panic came later. We finally were given the all clear. We went to our quarters. The next day I had the most amazing, after about 3 hours of sleep, that's all we got, had the most amazing experience. I got to experience an airdrop mission where we flew a C-17 at 2,000 feet. I watched the back of the door open and whoosh, flew out the back, fuel, ammunition, and water supply to forward operating base, you know, about an hour and a half, 2 hours from Bagram, and then we flew back. Most amazing experience, right? Now, the goal was to leave the country. I was just there to experience an airdrop, meet some people. I had no particular responsibility other than to witness. Now the goal was to leave the country. Great. There's nothing regularly scheduled. And so we found another plane that was going back to Bagram. We asked the pilot, can we join your flight? He said yes. We waited for many hours because there's a lot of waiting. And we finally got on the plane. We're literally 5 minutes from leaving. We're all strapped into the back of this KC-46 again. And it's a outbound aeromedical. So we're taking out wounded servicemen and women. And 5 minutes before we leave, the pilot comes up to us and says, I need to bump you off this flight because I need some extra room for stretchers. And we went, sounds good. If there's ever a good reason to get bumped off a flight, this is it. So we took our stuff off and we thought, okay, let's go find another flight. And that's when we learned that there are no other flights leaving until Tuesday and it's only Saturday. And now all of a sudden, every fiber of my body sank. All of a sudden I realized I'm stuck in this country and there's no guarantee I'm going to get on a flight on Tuesday. I don't have any way to contact my parents. I'm just going to be completely out of touch after the date that they think I'm coming home. And even if I did call them, what am I going to say? I'm not going to be home. I'm in Afghanistan, like in the middle of a war, you know? I remember I had a tremendous self-awareness of how I felt and who I was becoming. And there was a public affairs officer who said, I can get you to Kyrgyzstan, but you don't have the right visa. And I literally put my finger in his face. I don't do that. I've never held my finger in someone's face in my life. And I put my finger in his face and said, you get me on that plane. Like, I don't talk to people that way. And I could see myself becoming this person that I am not and didn't want to be. We went back to our quarters. We're all exhausted. And so I lay down on the bed and closed my eyes just because I was tired, but there's no way I was sleeping. My mind was racing. One of the officers said, well, I'm going to see if I can find us another flight. And so he left. And the other officer said, well, I'm going to go to the gym then. And he left. And he thought I was sleeping. So as he left, he turned the lights out and I was left by myself in the dark. My mind going crazy. And now I'm panicked. That feeling that I should have had when the rockets hit, I'm now having it right now. I'm convinced I'm going to die. I'm convinced there's going to be another rocket attack. I'm convinced it's going to land on me. I'm convinced my parents are going to find out I was here when the military knocks on the door and tells them. And no logic can dissuade me. I know one of the reasons I feel this way is because I have no sense of purpose, right? I didn't come here for any reason. I just came here to witness. And so look, I'm in the purpose business. I'm like, all right, Simon, you need purpose. You need purpose. Come up with a sense of purpose. All right, you're here to learn and come back and tell their story. Okay, there you go. And it made me feel good for like 5 minutes. And then it disappeared, and the panic and the paranoia came back in. And I went through this cycle multiple times trying to invent a purpose for myself. And then I finally realized I couldn't come up with anything, and I gave up. And I lie in that bed, resigned to the fact that I was stuck there without a sense of purpose. And I decided that if I was going to get stuck here, I might as well make myself useful, that I would volunteer, that I would speak to the troops that they wanted me to. I would carry boxes. I would sweep floors. I didn't care how menial the work. I just wanted to serve those who were serving others. And in that moment, I found unbelievable calm, even excitement to be there to serve those who serve others. As if it were a movie, the timing was extraordinary. Having just come to this remarkable insight, the door flies open. It's Major Throckmorton. He says, there's a flight that's been redirected. It's going to Ramstein. We can get on the plane if we leave now. They're not going to wait for us. We have to go. We have to go now. We have to go now. Where's Matt? I'm like, he's at the gym. We run to the gym. We get Matt off the treadmill. There's no time for him to shower. He puts his uniform back on. We grab all of our stuff and we run to the flight line to get on this plane. We get to the flight line. We can see the C-17 we're supposed to get on. It's right over there. We can see it. But the security stops us and won't let us onto the flight line. There's a fallen soldier ceremony happening somewhere on the base. And out of respect, everything stops. And so we sat on the curb and waited. And while we were sitting there, I told the guys what I had gone through lying in that bed. Mind you, I have no idea how long I was in that bed for. I could have been in there for 10 minutes. I could have been there for an hour. I don't want anybody to tell me either. I lost all concept of time. I sat there and told them what I had gone through, and I'd come to this remarkable insight that true purpose in life is to serve those who serve others. And I wept while I was sitting on that curb. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know about the military is crying is just fine. Finally, the security came up and we were able to walk to the aircraft. We boarded the plane. We would be the only 3 passengers aboard this aircraft. What I didn't know at the time is the reason this flight had been redirected is that we would be carrying the soldier for whom they just had the fallen soldier ceremony. We stood there and waited, and the army brought on the flag-draped casket. The soldiers put the casket right in the middle of the aircraft. They stood there and did a very slow 8-count salute. They turned, marched off the plane, and we could watch them hugging and crying as they walked out of sight. Our Air Force crew got to work and they strapped the casket down in the middle of the aircraft, and we got going. I've never had such an honor in my life, having just gone through this experience that I had on the ground, learning that true purpose is the opportunity to serve those who serve others, that I get to bring home somebody who knows a lot more about purpose than I ever will. We land at Ramstein, and we have one night at Ramstein before we come home. The final flight home is another C-17 back to Andrews Air Force Base. And this is an aeromedical evacuation. So it's what they call an AE mission. So the wounded, some ambulatory, some not. And we get into the flight. This flight was a little more relaxed, and lots of nurses tending to the wounded. And in the back of the aircraft was a single gurney, a single Marine who was in what they call CCAT, which is an artificial coma. Very, very badly wounded, and he had 4 doctors attending to him personally. And I sort of avoided going to the back of the plane because it was uncomfortable. And I finally said, no, I gotta go. So I walked to the back of the plane to talk to the docs, and they walked me through his wounds. His buddy stepped on an IED and was killed, and he took the shrapnel. He had shrapnel in the chest, shrapnel in the eye, and he was in very bad shape. And the docs were telling me that the amount of new techniques that they were learning how to treat trauma just because of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan was slowly making its way into civilian hospitals. So even when they're wounded, they're still serving us, you know? And the lead doc was a reservist who works in an ER in Austin. And had I not gone through what I had just gone through 24 hours before, I would never have asked him this question. But I did. I asked him, hey doc, you're a good guy. You work in an ER. You save lives for a living. That's your job. Do you have a different kind of feeling on these missions than you do back home? And he looked at me and he said, 90 to 95% of the people who come through an ER are either drunks or idiots. He says, there's not a single drunk or idiot on this aircraft. He said, the feeling that I get when I get to work these missions during my reserve hours is more powerful than any feeling I ever get when I'm working back home. Again, the greatest sense of purpose and meaning we can have in our lives is to serve those who serve others. Part of the deal that they made with me when I went, the general said, I want you to go and I want you to come back and tell us your insights. What you saw that we did well, what you saw weak, just tell us your insights. So about 2 weeks after I got home, I went back to Scott Air Force Base and was standing in a room full of all the brass, all the generals, the colonels, all the command from the mobility forces. And they just wanted me to report on what I saw. And I went through everything. And I wasn't sure if I was going to tell them about bringing home this flag-draped casket. That was the emotions were very raw still. And I'm not sure I wanted to do it or could do it. And I remembered I was reporting on everything else that I saw and the people I met and the things that I thought were amazing. And I took a pause and I decided to tell the story. And now, the emotions are right on the surface. And I tell the whole story in even more detail than I'm telling you now. And I got to the point where I choked up and I couldn't continue. I couldn't tell the story anymore. Now, if this was the private sector and I was standing on a stage telling this exact story, somebody in private sector would say to me, take your time. They would say, it's okay. That's what they would say to me, right? It's happened. Take your time, right? That's not what happened. I stood there completely choked up. I couldn't speak. And was one voice from the back of the room, the general. And he said, go on. Meaning, go on and we're with you. Right? And that's the difference between private sector and these wonderful people. In private sector, they say to you, take your time as if you're alone. Take all the time you need by yourself. And here, these people who understand what service truly means, they say, go forwards, go on, move forwards, you have no choice, and we will be with you. And that's what I learned from them. When my friends are struggling, I don't say, take your time. When my friends are struggling, I say, go on. When my friends are crying, I say, go on. The underlying message is, and I am here sitting in the mud with you. It is the greatest honor of my life. And because of that experience, that's where the book Leaders Eat Last came from. That experience was the impetus for that book. So when we talk about what the future looks like, I just want to live a life of service. I want to continue to serve those who serve others. And to meet people who live a life of service, I will do anything for them. I think there's an unwritten rule that when you meet someone who's devoted their life to serving those who serve others, that it is our responsibility to serve them. There's an unwritten rule. The reason I do so much pro bono stuff is because when I meet people who are on the side of good, on the side of service, I obey that unwritten agreement that I will be there for you and I will serve you and expect nothing in return. And if you want to bring it full circle back to relationships, when one person shows up in the relationship to serve you, you have the moral responsibility to serve them. Because to serve someone who serves others, they are serving you, which means we have to serve them. I live my life by that code.
The key second line in true purpose is serving those that serve others. The line that you've added and that you learned from your experience going to Afghanistan was that we'll be there with you along the way.
Mm-hmm.
How important is that for you in your mission, that you have someone there with you? And do you feel like you have someone there with you on the mission you're on? You talked about the iceberg, pulling it out of the ocean. At the start of this conversation, you reflected on feeling lonely, not understood.
I feel lonely it's my personal life, right?
Do you feel like you have people that are there with you?
Absolutely. And when somebody comes up to me on the street and says, "Thank you, you changed my life," I always say the same thing to them. Thank you for being a part of the movement. I always thank them for being a part of the movement. When they say, "Your life changed me," my word back to them is, continue your work, right? Thank you for being a part of the movement is what I always say. Because when you say, I do not feel alone. I feel that I'm a part of an army with thousands to the left and thousands to the right. Dare I say millions to the left and millions to the right. Some who I know and most I will never know. But we were all marching towards the same direction to build this world that we all believe in our capacity, whether we're doing it for our little company, whether we're doing it for our family, whether we're doing it for our friends, or whether we're doing it at massive scale because we have that opportunity, because we have a bully pulpit, or we lead a large organization.
That's the professional side.
Yes. Personally, do I feel I have people to my left and right to work with? Yes, 100%. Absolutely. My team is incredible. My closest confidant is my sister. You know, my sister and I are business partners and the best of friends.
This question started with me asking you about looking forward a couple of years and everything's idyllic. You've given me the professional answer.
Yeah.
The personal side of that coin is kind of what I'm trying to understand.
I mean, I think the answer is I want somebody, I love companionship. And I want to be able to more than talk about and share my magical, surreal life with someone. Because I have a wonderful life and I do want to share it with somebody. I think sharing is more fun than just telling people about something. You know, I want to come back and be, do you remember that thing that we did? As opposed to, can I tell you about this thing that I did? You know? I want to share somebody else's life. I want to hear about their bad day. I want to hear about their good day. I want to be their cheerleader. You know? I want the opportunity. I've been a shitty servant in my relationships in the past. I've been a really shitty servant, and I've built the skill set. You know, I'm a slow learner. Give me a break. It's better to learn it now than learn it never. But I want the opportunity to take all these skills that I've been talking about really effectively and really good at doing professionally, and I want the opportunity to do it just for one person.
You spent your life being a fantastic servant to me, from before we even met, to many more people like me. And you know this, you said millions to your left, millions to your right. It's millions. You've been a fantastic service to millions. And sometimes, even in my own life, I reflect and think the service that I did, whether it was building the service to my employees or the service to the outside world, it came at a cost. And that was often the service to one individual who was right there, who I sometimes took for granted over and over again, to the point that I lost them and then had to live with the regret. But I mean, it just seems so obvious to me that because you have the awareness of all of that, you're perfectly placed to serve.
I'm having a thought, an insight right now, which I hadn't had before, which is, we've talked about, you know, everything that we gain in this life comes at a cost. And the only question is, was the cost worth it? And so now, if you say, I put all of this focused on this movement and it came at such personal cost, right? Like, I took my eye off the ball. I wasn't investing the time to be a better boyfriend, to learn how to have a relationship, to learn how to manage, you know, some of the symptoms of the ADHD, just to forget about the ADHD, just to learn not to be an idiot, you know? Was it worth it? And the sad thing is, it was. Like, if you're asking me, in the state that I'm sitting in now, would I sit in the state right now again and do it all exactly the same way? I'm not sure I'd do it exactly the same way, but I believe the movement that we're building and what you and I are both a part of, it was worth it. Now, it wouldn't have been worth it if I didn't learn this lesson now and be given the opportunity now. You know, would I have preferred it 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Yes. But I believe the cost was worth it, because I think the work that we're doing has nobility to it, and it matters. And that weirdly makes it sort of, that's really nice. Yeah, the cost was worth it.